NATO defense ministers' one topic of discussion is the risk that Russian President Vladimir Putin might use nuclear weapons in Europe. In today's video, we are going to discuss everything about this whole issue. Stay tuned to find out more. The recent massive disproportionate missile attacks launched against Ukraine in reaction to the truck bombing of the Kerch Bridge enhanced the belief that the Kremlin stays to be unpredictable. However, Russian use of weapons of mass destruction against non-nuclear Ukraine seems uncertain for various reasons, including the fact that it may discourage Russia's bigger motives. Western military officials can and must think through their possible responses. Doing so is naturally tough, knowing about the multiple variables in play. But there are choices that would punish Moscow and safeguard alliance interests without propelling the West up a nuclear escalation ladder. The ministerial meetings in Brussels, which includes a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, gives an opportunity for NATO allies and partners to calculate the trajectory of the dispute at an important moment. Recent Ukrainian battlefield successes, Putin's partial mobilization, the Ukrainian assault on the Kerch Bridge, and broad Russian retaliation striking important infrastructure add up to a war with no end in sight. Putin's illegal annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions, his reputation for rash, short-sighted behavior, and his nuclear saber-rattling have many on edge about an even more dramatic escalation. Maybe most importantly, Putin's illegal annexation of 4 Ukrainian provinces, including his prestige for rash, short-sighted behavior, and his nuclear saber-rattling, have many on edge about an even more surprising escalation of the dispute. So far, Western governments have also seen no evidence of Russian preparation for the use of nuclear weapons. For this reason, NATO defense ministers could just continue to criticize the reckless and destabilizing Russian rhetoric regarding nuclear weapons. For some, this may be enough, under the belief the risks for Putin are just too high and the associated military benefits too low. However, depending on where, how, and how many are used, tactical nuclear weapons could maybe equalize a quantitative or qualitative flaw in conventional forces. This is why the US evolved and fielded them in the Cold War, especially in the 1950s, at a time when the Soviet Union had traditional superiority in Europe. While their use against a nuclear-armed foe might lead to uncontrolled escalation, it's not clear that this would happen against a non-aligned nation without the capacity to respond in kind like Ukraine. So it's possible that there could be some military efficacy. The major question is whether there would be any political efficacy. If Putin were to use nuclear weapons in the war, even if only for demonstrative purposes, he would probably further unify NATO and distance his remaining friends in Europe. He would probably turn China, India, and much of the rest of the world against him. And he could make those regions of Ukraine that he tried to annex uninhabitable for decades, if not longer. From the outside, these all appear like highly unpopular outcomes for the Kremlin. However, one region where the Kremlin may be ready to risk all that and more is in defense of Crimea. Illegally combined in 2014 by Moscow, Crimea has a huge Russian-speaking population that is naturally sympathetic to Russia. It is also home to the strategically crucial Russian naval base at Sevastopol, which is the Russian Black Sea Fleet's home port, as well as other military infrastructure such as Saki Air Base. Since 2014, Crimea has seen an exodus of ethnic Ukrainians and Tatars, an influx of Russians, and a military buildup. Knowing about all these things being at stake, it's possible that Putin perceives Crimea as closer to the beginning of Russian important interests than the Kharkiv region, which was newly liberated by Ukrainian forces. If and when Ukrainian traditional military forces approach Crimea in wishes of liberating it, Putin may feel more interested to use a nuclear weapon. Whether used to defend risks to Russia's occupation of Crimea or otherwise, possible Russian use of nuclear weapons demands at least understanding through possible reactions. The United States has also devoted some effort to studying this, starting soon after Putin's forces invaded Ukraine. Washington stays committed to avoiding direct involvement in the war, but Biden administration officials have pointed out that Russian detonation of a nuclear weapon, no matter how small, could provoke a reconsideration. Well, there are many responses NATO can and should consider in the event of Russian WMD use that would not lead to a spiraling nuclear conflagration. Discussing those options now is wise, so they are prepared and available should NATO's leaders require them. Also, examining logical alliance-wide responses to a Russian nuclear attack on Ukraine would help earn 2 other valuable goals. First, it would prepare both Allied leaders and citizens for such a crisis. But NATO stays a nuclear alliance. Some European allies have long chosen to see nuclear weapons referred to the background when it comes to Allied defense. And second, Just suggesting that NATO was conducting a strong assessment of possible responses would signal to Moscow that WMD use would bring not only bigger U.S. involvement, but also broad-based European action. What's your take on this topic? Tell us in the comments section below. With that being said, it's time to end today's video. Press the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stuff.